Okay, everybody, my name is Graham Allen. I am one of the regional wealth leaders here at IBC Win. Joining me, as you can see on the screen, is my colleague from the West Coast, Alex Chan. And we have two presenters from Equitable Life today. I believe the main presentation is going to be hosted by Giuliano, and Michael's there to add some color and maybe some practical applications of how we use the product if we have time at the end of the presentation. This is an important product to have. Your product shelf can't be complete without this on here, and it's something we've been waiting for. So we commend Equitable for bringing this product to life as quickly as they have. We're solution providers when it comes down for the clients that we work with. I mean, we need those full range of products to be able to do the job properly and offer the complete range of services. So again, it's fantastic to have. In addition, it's a product that's going to get you in front of younger clients, maybe those clients in the household that you've never really had the impact with or the chance to meet. This is obviously a great product to get in front of those people as they help save towards their first home. We know typically when there's a change with advisor, the monies typically don't go to kids, or if parents pass away, there's always another advisor with the children. This is something that's going to help you tighten up the relationships with that kind of intergenerational money transfer and strengthen relationships you have. So that's enough from me.
Hi, my name is Mike Ricketts. I'm the Regional Investment Sales Manager for BC Region. Thank you for taking the time. We spent a lot of resources and effort to make sure that we were the first to come to the table with this new account. We realized that it's going to be a valuable tool for you guys to use. And so today we're going to do a quick run through about how it is, what it is, how it works. And if we have time near the end, to obviously answer questions and then also give some potential case studies as to where we see this account having real teeth, not only for your clients, but also for your own business. I think I've done a lot of these sessions already, and a lot of the commentary that I got early on was, it's too small. It's why should I focus on this? And I kind of liken it to when the TFSA was first introduced. And I think if you remember, if you were in the business for that period of time, it wasn't really much to it, right? Because the limit was so small. And so it was kind of a secondary thought. Okay, great. Somebody needs to put money in a GIC or a savings account and put it in that account. But now, as you see, as things evolved and this account gets more and more used, the TFSA turned into actually a really valuable long-term financial planning strategy tool. And I think this is what's going to happen with the First Home Savings Account. Obviously, it's meant to save for home first and foremost, but there's going to be some long-term applications that are going to actually be beneficial for you to build your AUM, but also keep it for a longer period of time, which is, of course, is what you want when you're doing this business. So we'll go forward. If there's any questions, please feel free to type them in, or I think Alex will be kind of a moderator, or Graham will, and hopefully you guys learn quite a bit. So let's talk about the introduction first. What is it? Of course, this is a tool that was just introduced by the federal government. It's called the FHSA, First Home Savings Account. No one's actually had the ability to actually say it easily. FHSA, I think, is what we've come up with the best so far. It was introduced in the 2022 federal budget. And of course, in BC, we're really familiar with this, and especially Ontario too. I have to remember we're a national training today. Ontario and BC especially, there's a housing crunch. We hear in the news every day that people, the next generation, are not able to get into the housing market and that they're actually going to be giving it up. So this is a tool to kind of help people get into their first homes. It's a secondary tool. It's not to replace the RSP withdrawal plan. So if you have clients who wanted to use both, that's perfect. But I think this account actually is going to be very helpful. It helps first-time home buyers, as we mentioned. What is the definition of the first-time home buyers? It's slightly different than you might be used to because the RSP withdrawal definition. So we'll talk about what that definition is. The annual contribution limit of $8,000 is per year, with a maximum of $40,000. Contributions basically are tax deductible like an RSP. So if you're trying to explain it to a client and you want to make it easy, we all understand that clients like easy. I would say it's just as simple as money going in. It's like an RSP. You reduce your taxes, which means maybe gets you a refund. And when you take the money out, it's like a TFSA. You can take it out. All the growth was tax-free, and you take it out as long as it's a qualified withdrawal. is totally tax-free as well. So it kind of combines the best of the two accounts, the RSPs and the TFSAs, into one third option for savings. So let's talk about who's eligible. First of all, it's Canadian residents, okay? Minimum of 18 years of age. So across Canada, typically some of you might be used to 19 being the legal age to do contracts. Because this is a federal account, they'll accept 18 across Canada. First-time home buyers, here's the definition that's slightly different, okay? It has two parts of it. Has not owned a home in which they have lived in during the current or preceding 4 calendar years, okay? So there may be scenarios where somebody bought a home maybe more than 5-6 years ago. Maybe they couldn't afford to maintain it themselves, so they did some rental arbitrage. They might have rented it out for much higher, and then rented something out. They might still qualify because the two caveats is owning the home but also living in it. So just be aware of that definition. Obviously, it's not up to you to determine if your clients are actually qualified. They should actually know themselves. But it's good for you to be able to explain it to a client how it works. It's for new Canadians without a social insurance number. So basically a TIN, we call it a TIN, temporary insurance number. But so it doesn't have to have a SIN to do it. Which, of course, if you heard the news, there's been a huge uptick in immigration, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So the amount of new people coming to Canada looking for homes who may not have a SIN number right away, this is going to be a whole market that's going to be brand new and open to you as advisors. So now this is where sometimes it gets a little confusing is, the participation period. This isn't the amount of money that you can put in. This isn't the amount of how long you can hold it for, the 5 years for the max. This is how long the account can actually stay open, okay? So there is a finite end to when this account has to be used or closed. It's 15 years or age 71, basically in a nutshell. So what happens at the end of the 15 years, unless your client gets to 71 first. There's no tax withheld if the client withdraws to purchase a qualifying home. Okay, so that's the first step. If they actually use this account as it's intended, and they do find a place to buy, and they actually want to take the money out, there's no taxation or taxable consequence at all. That includes all the growth in the portfolio or the savings as well as what they put in. If the client, however, does withdraw the money and it's not a qualified withdrawal, this basically will become just like an RSP withdrawal. It's a taxable event. So this is important because a lot of people will get kind of gun shy about locking, having no flexibility and having no options if something comes out of left field. Depending on the assets they use inside the account, there is no restrictions on taking the money out at any time. It's just if it's not a qualified withdrawal, it then has to be claimed as taxable income and, of course, pay tax on it. December 31st of the year, basically the 15th year of when the account was opened. So this is really important because if you really want to take advantage of the maximized value of this account for the long term, you want to make sure your clients take advantage of the full 15 years as much as possible. So in the scenario we're seeing right now, people are kind of dabbling in the account. They might put $100 in, get the account open. But what that does, that triggers the 15-year participation period. So if they don't actually keep putting money in at a quicker pace, they're actually getting reduced time that they can have the money grow tax-free. So I think Giuliano, my counterpart, when he comes back on and takes over, he might talk about the options of what to do if you're, to preserve that 15 years and still be able to use this account properly. The other option that could happen is December 31st of the year, the client turns 71. Basically, if the money hasn't been used, it has to be collapsed. Now, that would be almost the worst case scenario that you get to the end. So basically either 71 or 15 years, they've had really good advice by you and the money's grown quite a bit. And now the account has to be collapsed. That could actually turn into a big tax hit in theory. But there's things you can do that we'll talk about later in the presentation where the money can be moved over somewhere else, or maybe it can be withdrawn in a drip method to reduce that taxable hit at the end of 15 years. I think I've seen Giuliano come back on. Giuliano, are you on now? No? Okay. So let's talk about opening the account. Okay, this is really important. This is where where we came to the table first. We understand there's a huge, and I think it's important to understand that as advisors, you want to make sure you understand what consumers want. In the first day of opening this account and making it live, we were hit with quite a few accounts, and we keep seeing it. There's a huge amount of demand, and I think, of course, the demand is going to be a big wave of initial options. But it's important that you get up to speed quickly so that you're not losing this opportunity to maybe the banks or some other advisors. But opening the account, basically, CRA, basically, what you do, you can open up the account with us. It could be a $50 a month pack or a $500 lump sum. Those are our account minimums. What that does, though, basically starts the 15-year participation period. So here's an example. So Remy opens his account November 15th, 2023. He doesn't make his first contribution until March 10th, 2024. We probably wouldn't let that happen because we wouldn't let you need to have that minimum to open the account. But in this situation, he doesn't make his first one until a little later. So what that means is 15 years has already started. So that money that he put in, if they really wanted to maximize long-term growth, they've reduced that time period they can use. And this is why I think it's really important that we get clients to be really engaged if they're going to use this account. And what do I mean by that? I mean, making the maximum contributions from day one and getting all the 40,000 in as soon as possible. That gives you that greatest long-term tax-free growth option. Let's talk about contribution room. I think we get a lot of questions about this, just like RSPs and TFSAs. It's really important to know what your clients' contribution rooms are. I think we've all been in this business long enough to understand that clients may not always tell you if they've opened up a TFSA somewhere else or an RSP somewhere else. So, relying on their word could lead to maybe over contributing to an account. So obviously the best ways of all is always checking with CRA online. Can do the My Account with CRA. They always have the limits already there. I've already seen online 8,000 because I've already started a FHSA for someone else. So basically 8,000 per year is the max you can put in. So that's your limit once you open an account. And it's really important to understand that that limit doesn't get started until you actually open the account. So we've been asked already, okay, well, it's 2023. If I don't open an account today, do I already still have 8,000 limit for this year? And then 2024, I have 16,000? No. CRA says that limits don't start until you actually start an account. So this is where, sometimes you have to have that burning bed incentive to get people to do something today with you. It's really important. If a client plans on buying a home maybe in 2024, and they want to maximize what they can do for maybe taxable write-off, but also for what they can do for contributions towards the purchase, it's important that they start the account in 2023 because the $8,000 limit starts when you open the account. So let's say 2023, they open it today. They then trigger $8,000 limit. And then January 1st, 2024, they trigger another $8,000 limit. So if in that case, if they open the account today or before the end of the year, they'll actually have $16,000 of limit to use towards the purchase next year. If they wait till January 1st, 2024 to open the account, their limit is only going to be 8,000. So I think that's a huge missed opportunity for the client and also for you from a business point of view. So once they do open the account, they start to trigger the $8,000 limit. Let's say they only use a little bit though. Basically, you can carry forward contribution amounts. So we'll show the example here. So if they've only put in, let's say, $1,000 and their limit's $8,000 for the year, they can carry forward $7,000 to the next year. So here's an example. And there is a bit of a caveat you have to be careful of. And it's once again maximizing the benefits and the usage of this account, where it comes if you have the money, you want to try to use it as much as possible, as quick as possible. So Fareed contributes $5,000 in year one. So with that, basically that's when he started the account. That means he has $3,000 left of limit. But in 2024, Fareed's basically his contribution then triggers out to $11,000, right? So he has $3,000 from 2023 that he carries forward to 2024. And of course, in the new year, he gets an additional $8,000 limit. So those two combined gives him the amount of $11,000 that he can put into 2024. The problem here, and where you have to be kind of careful, is the client doesn't use the account really quickly, the next year in 2025, he may not be able to contribute as much as his limit is, because you can only carry up to the most you can contribute in any year is 16,000. So what does that mean, Mike? Well, that means, let's say 2023, he only puts $100 in. 2024, he only puts $100 in. Well, in 2025, you think his limit would be 8,000 plus 7,900 plus 7,900, right? But that would be over 16,000. So in 2025, he wouldn't be able to contribute his maximum limit. It would be capped at the total of 16,000. That doesn't mean he loses it. It just means he has to wait to 2026 or 2027 to get back under 16,000 so he can do the max. That's a little bit confusing. And I think if you try to explain it to a client, they might kind of glaze over their eyes. But as an advisor, it's maybe important that you understand that at any given point in any year in this program, $16,000 is the max they can put in. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions at that point. Alex, is there any questions or anything at this stage?
Yeah, there's a question here. If a client does not deposit anything in, say, year 4, will the next year limit be 8,000 from last year, and for the new year, another 8,000?
Yeah. If he had already maxed out the previous year's contribution, but no matter what, even if there was carry forward, 16,000 would be the max that he could contribute, right?
Yeah. And there was another great question that I believe was answered about grandma, grandpa, and of course parents opening this account for the kids and grandkids. And I believe that was one of the sales opportunities that we were going to talk about.
Yeah, we can touch about that real quick now, or leave it till the very end. If it's already a burning question, maybe we should hit on it right now. Like you said, a lot of people, if you use this account, just thinking it's only $8,000 a year for 40,000, it's only 40,000 total. Not a lot of reason for me to get involved in that market. Well, a sales 101, you could use it as kind of a way to get into a new family that you maybe weren't getting any traction with before, and maybe get other business from them. But this account itself, actually, where I think it has real teeth and where it can become a hugely valuable tool, is for families that have 18, 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-olds even, children. The parents can gift the full $40,000 to the kids. The account has to be opened in the kid's name, of course, 18 minimum, right? Can't be under 18. But the account still is opened up in the child's name, but the parents can gift the deposit. And now, because the kid, the child, I'm using the kind of a slang term there, then they can use the full 15 years of max growth. And that, obviously 15 years of growth tax-free can turn into quite a sizable amount of money. But I think that gets to a point when the child's at 33, 34, 35, where they are potentially looking to buy their first home, that sweet spot. So I think that using the multi-generational aspect, where parents or grandparents gift the 18-year-old, 19-year-old child the money to use this account, is where the huge value is. It also opens up the window of what you can actually put in the account. Obviously time is the biggest factor when you're trying to select investments for clients. Making sure the right products match the right time frames. So for clients that might be using this account in the shorter time frame, let's say 6 weeks, a year, you're very kind of limited as to what investment options you might be suitable for that, right? You want liquidity, give up performance. Not a lot of options. But if you actually use this account where you can use the full 15 years, I think it opens up the whole gamut of what you can actually put this money into use at. And that opens up seg fund, equity funds, where you can maximize growth. And of course, there's other options at the end of 15 years, remember, that we'll talk about later. But at the end of the day, if you use this account with the kids, as Alex mentioned earlier on, is the multi-generational, and you use the parents or grandparents to fund it, I think that 15 years of max growth and the wide range of options to invest really makes this account hugely valuable, not for the families and for your own business, because that AUM will stay with you for 15 years. And I think we all agree is that if somebody starts with you today, very likely they won't go somewhere else and open up another one. They'll stay with you. And of course, if they have multiple kids, they might do it multiply. So you can actually see this expand quite quickly. And the AUM for your own business can actually turn into be a very sizable contribution to your own revenues. Alex, was that okay?
Yeah, and that's great. And there's just one more quick question here. Mike, does the home have to be purchased in Canada?
Yeah, it has to be a qualified purchase, which means it has to be a principal residence. So it has to be in Canada. So great question, but yes. Any other questions about the contribution rooms and the cap on the carry forward option? Before I move
No, I believe that's it for now. So yeah, carry on and
okay,
doing a great job.
So here's an example. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the breakdown. So the contribution room, it's unlike the TFSA. The contribution room does not accumulate. So in Canada, your TFSA limit isn't tied to you having earnings like an RSP. It's basically if you are a Canadian resident and qualify, you get that limit automatically each and every year. And that limit, of course, if you don't use it, doesn't go away. It just gets carried forward. This program was designed to be specific for one purpose. So basically, the limit doesn't actually start until the account starts, right? So I can't stress it enough how important it is that if you have potential clients, potential families out there that could use this account or see the value of this account, you got to get them to start today. And I mean, for you guys, that means, of course, EQ today, because you want them to get that limit started, even if they don't use it this year. But there's a big difference between, husband, wife having only $8,000 each to use and $16,000 to use, right? So the limit doesn't accumulate until the account is started. So if you're looking for a reason to get your clients to be motivated to work with you today, that might be just enough to get them to understand, hey, let's do something, versus waiting. Also, unlike the TFSA, if the client withdraws the money from the VISA and it's unrelated to a home purchase, so it's not a qualified withdrawal, the client does not have the contribution room reinstated the following year. What does that mean? Sometimes some people who write these presentations, it gets a little wordy. Simply, we all know that if your client maximizes their TFSA and they withdraw it, they can't recontribute until January 1st. It's like a revolving line of credit. That limit doesn't go away. As a matter of fact, it actually increases for future deposits because not only are you allowed to put the money back in that you deposited initially, the growth that you took out, you can put back in as well. So the TFSA is like a revolving line of credit. If you use it, then take the money out, it comes back. But of course, remember, it has to wait usually till January 1st of the following year. This program is you use it, you lose it. Okay, so once again, hopefully your client doesn't dabble with this account. Like, well, I'm going to put $100 in here. Oh, my car broke down. I'm going to take the $100 out. Because if they put the deposit in, it reduces their limit. If they withdraw that money for an unqualified purchase, they can't put it back in. That limit doesn't come back. Okay. Once a client opens the account, as I mentioned, the limit will show up on their notice of assessment. And I think if you're all in this business and you do a lot of registered transfers or a lot of registered business, I think it's probably one of the first things you go to automatically, or at least I know I do, and several other people use this. The notice of assessment, CRA. You always want to try to avoid any kind of over contributions. The CRA has gotten very cranky and they've gotten very heavy on penalties for over contribution, mostly to RSPs and TFSAs. So it's just important to understand that if you're going to do this with a client, obviously if it's the first time, it's brand new, so likely is 8,000 is the max no matter what. But there has been accounts accessible to clients previous to us, and that's of course the banks. So it might just be important to do kind of a little check, just in case there might be other assets for you to gather as well. Just ask, have you opened up an account anywhere else? If so, maybe we need to just confirm what your limit is available, right? But the notice of assessment is obviously the best place always to get those limits. And of course, CRA. So there's a 1% charge on the excess contribution, blah, blah, blah. We all know, we've all heard about the penalties. And there's always going to be clients who say, oh, geez, only 1% per month. If I put it into the NASDAQ 100 seg fund, I might earn 30%. So, hey, cost of doing business. Really, you gotta make sure that clients are aware that that 1% charge or over contributions isn't really the big kick anymore. It's the penalties that the CRA will charge. If you Google, there was actually a case recently where a client had over contributed to an RSP multiple times, not by much, maybe just $500 here and there, but they considered it to be a habitual. He blamed on his tax count, of course, but the courts upheld the penalty, which was excessive in my mind, but it was basically they wanted to make sure people understood you can't go over, right? And if you do, and you do it more than once, we're going to really hit you hard with penalties. So if your client has that thought process where, oh, it's only really cost me 1% a month, but I could put in an investment that earns more, just caution them that that's not probably a wise thought process. I'm not going to go into the examples of how it works for excess contribution. I think we all just try to avoid that as much as possible. So here's some scenarios about getting money and stuff like that into the account and some options that your client might have, okay? Obviously, the most cleanest way of doing this is new money going in. But there might be where clients don't have the new money, so it might be transferring in or out, okay? So basically, can it be done? Transfers, yes, they can be done. But, obviously there's going to be some pros and cons and some caveats to it. So basically, the proceeds from a FISA can be transferred to another FISA, so a registered transfer, just like an RSP, TFSA, or an RSP or a RIF, okay? So remember we told you there might be options at the end, if somebody, doesn't want to buy a home, or maybe the markets have gone so crazy that they still can't afford to buy a home. Well, there is ways to get out of the account without any huge taxation up front in those situations. So a client who no longer plans to use the FISA to purchase a home can actually move the proceeds on a tax shelter basis to a retirement savings account, okay? Now, it's important to understand, on the surface, it looks like there's no taxable consequences either way. It's just a clean, smooth. But in fact, it's a taxable event coming out. Sorry, that's on the other side. So when they move it from the FISA to the RSP, the only caveat is they have to have the RSP moved. Okay. So in a situation, let's say your client had built up the money for 15 years. They had great advice from you. They picked great investments. Let's say they had 200,000 plus in the account. Well, for them to actually be able to close the account and still have no taxable hit and move it to an RSP, they need to have $200,000 of RSP limit available, right? Otherwise, they can't do it. So yes, there might be options of closing the account and use it for other purposes, but there is going to be some hurdles or things you have to be careful of and aware of so that your client doesn't get himself in a bad situation at the end. In addition, if you want to actually transfer funds from an RSP to a FISA, okay, and I'm using FISA as it's the best way we've come up with it from terminology. But a lot of people ask me, well, can my client move the money from the RSP to a FISA account? Yes, you can. And this is what I was going to talk about real quick. It's not as simple as a clean, no taxable consequences to do it. It's actually basically almost behind the scenes a two-step approach. You withdraw from the RSP, that becomes a taxable event, right? Because any kind of withdrawals from RSPs, taxable, right? Now that means then, of course, you have to claim that withdrawal in theory as taxable income that year. However, when you put the money into the FISA, that same withdrawal, it's going to be basically a wash because now you get a tax deduction. Okay, so it's not clean. It can be done, but it's not clean. And what you're using up is of limits, and there might actually be withholding tax. I have to check on that. I'm sorry that I don't know that specifically, but if you're taking money out of the RSP, obviously there is withholding tax taken off. So let's say you take $10,000 out, 10% withholding, 9,000 net. But maybe that only leaves 9,000 to go into the FISA, which means you have a $10,000 taxable event. With a 9,000 write-off. So it's not very clean, but it can be done. And now here's the question you get. Does it make sense? I get that asked all the time. My client doesn't have any new money, but does it make sense to withdraw from the RSP and put it in the FISA? It could still. where the scenario works best is if you're using the home buyer's withdrawal for the RSP and you take out $35,000 there, maybe your RSP is big enough that you could actually take out $16,000 net from there, put it into the FISA, because if you use that money as a qualified withdrawal, there's no taxable event from moving from the RSP to the FISA, and there's no taxable event on the withdrawal. So that now gives your client much more use of the RSP to use towards the purchase of a home. So it does make sense to do that, but it's just not as clean as making an initial deposit with new money. And I'll stop there for a second again and just make sure that you guys understand that, because that's another area where a lot of people ask questions. So Alex, if there's any questions about that, feel free to let me know.
Yeah, there's one question here, Mike. So if a client maximizes the deposits each year and they run into, say, a financial emergency in year 5, where they need to, say, take out 10,000 for other than the first home needs, are funds taxable on withdrawal? And also, more importantly, can they get the 10,000 room back in future years?
Yeah. So as we covered, in a situation, these accounts do have liquidity. It's not locked in for the 15 years. Your clients can still access the available cash. There becomes then what's called a non-qualifying withdrawal. So just like if you're taking money out of the RSP, there'll be a taxable consequence. You'll have to claim it as income. Now, if your client's in a situation where their income that year is minimal, there might not be actually any net tax due. Because if you take $10,000 out, let's say, you have to claim the $10,000 as taxable income. But if you're in a low tax bracket, let's say 10% or less even, the actual tax that you end up having to pay could be $1,000 or less. So yes, you can access the money, but if it's not a qualified withdrawal, it becomes a taxable event. And depending on your client's tax bracket at that point, it can be actually very expensive tax-wise, or it can be actually very low tax-wise. Now, the second part of that question is, well, can we return the money afterwards? And let's go back to that whole thing about where, unlike TFSAs, where if you take money out, you can replace the limit later. That doesn't happen with this program. If you take it out, that limit is gone for good. You don't get to replace it. So in situations where maybe the client's not 100% sure about that money being able to be there, be dedicated for the home purchase or long-term tax-free growth, I might use a situation where the TFSA might be the place I park it at first until maybe we have the limits or maybe the money saved up already. Because with the TFSA, if you take it out, you can replace it. With the FISA, you can't. So this might be just a check and balance with a client. Some people say, well, I want the tax write-off right off the bat. Okay, great. But if it can't be committed to, you're kind of wasting it. So just be careful of that. And maybe if there is some issues about having to maybe access money early for not using for a home purchase, maybe you want to maybe use the TFSA in first for some of that money. Did that answer that question okay, Alex?
Yeah, no, that was great. Thanks, Mike.
Any other questions before I move on about the transfers?
No, I think we're good for now. Thanks.
I think transfers. The key thing to understand is it can be done for sure, and it can still bring value as long as the money actually ends up being used for a qualifying withdrawal, because it will increase your overall use of that RSP for a home purchase. But it's not as efficient as being able to put new money in. And as I talked about here, so RSP transfer, the client will receive a tax deduction for the initial contribution. Deposit will affect the client's RSP contribution room, right? So basically, when they take the money out, obviously that would be a withdrawal, so there's a taxable hit there. But when they put it into the FISA, they get that corresponding tax reduction. So it ends up being kind of a wash, but it does waste the client's RSP contribution room. Direct deposit to a FISA. Client receives a tax deduction for the initial contribution. Deposit will not affect the client's RSP contribution. So in a scenario where somebody has a finite amount of money this year to put away, if they're truly looking at buying a home in the near future, it might be better to actually make the deposit to the FISA account versus the RSP, because you're going to get the same benefits either way. but you're going to be keeping your RSP limit for later use while using the FISA for the near future home purchase. And that's one of the key things to make sure you understand is there is no timeline restriction. So your client, if they're buying a house tomorrow, they can actually open an account for $8,000, put it in, get the tax slip, and take the money out tomorrow, as long as it ends up being a qualified withdrawal. So you may have clients that are buying a home in the near future. Obviously, that's not going to give you a lot of long-term value for your own business, but it might be still a great conversation. It might lead to a relationship starter where that client, thanks you for, bringing that to his attention or her attention. And maybe they end up giving you other business, even on the life insurance side or on the investment side. So one of the biggest challenges we have in this business, I think, and I think we all agree, is trying to have something new to talk to somebody where they actually want to listen to us. Typically, if you try to bring up the conversation of life insurance in general or investments in general, most people have already been talked to by somebody else or they've already heard all of it, right? So they kind of like, no, I'm not really interested. Having something new that brings value and has a real reason for a client to actually want to talk to you is, I think, invaluable for building a relationship. So this account I would be at this stage talking to everybody about it just because no one else has heard about it really yet. Now, one of the questions I get asked about all the time is, can I use the home buyer's plan as well as this? Yes, you can. Just remember that the definitions are slightly different as to what a qualified home buyer plan client is versus the Visa account. Okay, but the client can actually purchase home using both the FISA and the RSP home buyer's plan. It provides this opportunity, of course, for large payments. And the FISA withdrawal does not have to be paid back, which is different. We all understand the home buyer's program. You have to repay it over a 15-year window. The FISA doesn't have to be paid back. Okay. So let's compare the two. Lifetime contribution room of $40,000 with an annual limit of $8,000, right? So the max that anybody can put in is $40,000. And of course, some people go, well, that's not a lot. But it can, if you really use this as a kind of an entry point to gather assets elsewhere, this could be a really good tool because it opens up the door to a lot of potential new clients that might not be on your book of business already. The RSP contribution room is based on employment income, not any specific limit. The FISA, no limit on the withdrawal amount. So at the end of the day, let's say the money grows for 12, 13, 14 years and it's $200,000, $300,000. They can take that whole amount, and as long as it's a qualified withdrawal, it's all tax-free. The RSP, obviously, if you're going to use the program, the maximum withdrawal is $35,000. Okay, and this is per husband or spouses, so husband, wife, whatever. They can use this in conjunction with each other. And as a matter of fact, if you really want to expand it, the FISA actually might also be, you could actually add an adult child. So let's say there's 3 people party to this qualified purchase. Well, then you might have husband, wife, adult child. So you can start actually really grow the amount you can use. The FISA has 5-year calendar years to be fully funded. There is no specific amount for that. Of course, qualified withdrawal is tax-free on both sides. Well, RSP is tax sheltered, right? You have to pay it back or you have to claim it. And here's where the key part is, and I think this is really important to understand. There's no waiting period to withdraw. So maybe you're already aware of clients that you've talked to that are already maybe in the process of buying their first home. Even if it's not really conducive to your own assets under management right now because it's going to be in and out, get them to take advantage of the $8,000 tax slip, get a little extra money, and encourage them to take advantage of this program, even if they are buying something in a day or 2 or a week, right? The RSP, obviously, there's an 89-day waiting period after depositing. So deductibility, this is a little bit different as well. With the RSP season, obviously we have the first 60 days that you can make a contribution and you can use that for the previous year's tax return. That's not the way it works with the FISA. The year you make the contribution is the year that you can claim it, or of course, carry it forward to a later tax year. But you can't use it for the previous tax year. So that's just something to be aware of because a lot of people, they've gotten into that habit of waiting till January, February to make their RSP contribution, because, they're allowed to. If they are thinking that same way with the FISA, it's going to come back to bite them. So whatever year they contribute the money is the year that it has to be used. So in January, February, if they make a contribution then, it can only be used for the next tax return, right? Unlike RSPs, spousal contributions are not available with a FISA, right? However, a client can give proceeds to a spouse to contribute to their own FISA. So just like the concept of giving to your child, there's no restrictions on gifting money to family members like that. Obviously there's always going to be just the money laundering checks and balances, but because it's a sheltered account, pretty much not going to see a lot of money laundering, I don't think, in it. But the attribution rule, I think we're all familiar with that. If your client does make a transfer to a spousal RSP, the money has to stay in that account for a certain period of time before it's withdrawn, or if it gets taxed back to the original depositor. Same thing here. So if non-transfer to a FISA has to be contributed to the spousal RSP in that year or previous 2 years. So just be aware of the attribution rule and how it works when it comes to transferring monies from an RSP to a FISA for a spousal RSP. I don't think we'll see a lot of this, but just be aware that there is maybe a slight restriction on doing that. Third-party contributions, as I mentioned. Third-party contributions to a FISA are not permitted. So if your client, let's say, opens up an account and then all of a sudden the grandparent wants to write a check and deposit it in that account directly, that's not going to be allowed. But they can gift it to the other person, which means give it to them. They put it into a bank account in their name, and then they can make the contribution directly themselves. Okay. So once again, where I think this has most of the teeth is taking advantage of for a full 15 years of max growth. If you have the time frame, especially with segments, you can add some additional protections in there. You could actually really open up the investment options and the amount of money that can be grown in tax-free in that account. So parents, I think if you do a study or if you've looked at polls, all parents want to help their children out, and the number one way they want to help them out outside of education is money for purchasing their first home. So with that in mind, there's a huge demand from clients to have money go from parents to spouses or kids for this purpose. This account is really going to have a lot of value to help solve that solution or that issue. Multiple accounts, yeah, just like a TFSA and RSP, there's no restrictions on how many FISA accounts a client can have. Obviously, I think that due to the nature of the account being, 5 years of 8,000, you're not going to see a lot of people opening accounts in multiple places. I think that once they commit to one place, that's where they're going to do the business. So this is where I think it's really important that you take advantage of the tool we're giving to you at EQ with this account, and take advantage of talking to people today and get them to be maybe just to commit to you first. Because as I mentioned, the banks had a head start on us. So there's clients who probably have accounts maybe already opened with the bank. There might be other carriers eventually coming to the table. But I think it's really important that, there's not going to be a lot of people doing multiple accounts in places. So if you're first to the table, they're going to probably stay with you the whole way. So what is a qualifying withdrawal? I think we're getting close to the hour that we have to speak, so I'll make sure I stay on time here. The qualifying withdrawal, basically the definition must be a first-time home buyer, defined as someone who's not owned a home in which they lived in the year of withdrawal or previous 4 calendar years. Okay, so this is really important because I love my business because I work with some advisors who can come up with the quickest ways of finding loopholes. This account, you have to be a qualified depositor and a qualified withdrawal. Okay, so I've had a lot of people say, well, can we open an account today? My client's only 2 years into the 4-year window, but they won't take the money out for 2 years. So, if I start the account with them today, when it comes time to take the money out, they'll be qualified. We looked into that just because it was a great thought process, and we want to make sure we give you guys all the tools and all the options available. No, CRA came back and, they clearly defined that you have to be a qualified depositor at the time and also then a qualified withdrawer. So what is a qualified withdrawal? Must have a written agreement to buy or build a qualified home before October 1st of the year following the year of withdrawal. So you don't have to be specifically, buying a home that very day of the withdrawal. but just understand that October 1st of the year following. To be honest, it doesn't make a lot of sense of withdrawing the money that early. Especially if you're in an interest based investment or something, you're just wasting tax-free growth. But you could take the money out earlier and have the money and then use the purchase home maybe 3 months later, 4 months later. But it has to be a written agreement to buy or build a qualifying home. And it must intend to occupy the home as a principal place of residence within 1 year of buying or building it. I think specifically, especially in BC and Ontario, again, that term intention is pretty gray. It does give you your client that wiggle room that if they took the money out and there was the intention to occupy the home as a principal place of residence, but maybe situations changed significantly in the meantime. CRA is not going to come and hammer you, as long as you show that there was a true intention. Things change, people's, divorces, things like that. There's a lot of options that could change the reason why somebody doesn't actually end up moving into the home as a principal place of residence. So there is that wiggle room from CRA that says, hey, as long as you acted in good faith when you made the withdrawal and there was an intention to move in at some point, we're not going to come back and hit you with a taxation or penalty issue. We'll take a couple seconds and just make sure before we get near the end here. Is there any other additional questions, Alex, that we should touch on? Because we're getting close to the hour here.
Yeah, there's a couple quick questions here, and I believe the answer is no, but I think I did ask you a couple of weeks ago, FHSA loan. Does Equitable have one at this time?
We are looking at potential partners, but nobody's come to the table as having this on the shelf. Obviously, we don't have internal lending facilities, so we partner with B2B. We're looking at Equitable Bank as well, and that might be an option in the near future. Taking a loan out for this, there might be other options, and I think Juliana was going to talk about using other products to fully fund this. But obviously, you can't write off the interest and stuff like that. So there's such a short time frame for some people that they haven't come to the table yet. We are looking at the options, but of course, if your client has a line of credit or something with them, where they can just withdraw, they can use more money there. But
okay, and just a couple more quick questions. The client age that FHSA can be opened?
18 minimum. We took because it's a federal account. They took the lowest age across Canada, so that's 18. So if you're in a jurisdiction where 19 is typically the legal age, this account, your 18-year-old could actually open it up.
Okay, and there's another good question. FHSA contributions can be carried forward and deducted in a later tax year. Is this indefinite, or is there a limit like charitable donations?
I'm not aware of any limits. Obviously, can you carry it forward for 20 years? I don't know, but we haven't seen any definition of an end date as to when you could carry it forward. It just says it could be carried forward. So
okay, great.
I think that there's no limit restriction on that yet.
Okay, and the qualified home, does that have to be? Can that be outside their province of residence?
Well, once again, to be a qualified purchase, it has to be a home you intend to live in as a principal residence, right? So it can't be a vacation home or any other, something. So if you're in Ontario right now and you plan on moving to BC and maybe you're renting in Ontario right now and you want to purchase in BC, I guess as long as once again, remember that terminology, intention. As long as you intend to occupy it within a year as your principal residence, then it's still a qualified withdrawal.
Okay, and one more last question here. Which is actually a great question. How many times can one use this program in their lifetime?
Well, in theory, it would reset after the 4-year period. So there is no restrictions on it because it doesn't say the first time buying a home in general. It says within the last 4 calendar years. So let's say you bought a home, you sold it, 4 years go by. You want to use this program again, in theory, there's no reason you couldn't, right? Because you would still then qualify as the first home buyer.
Okay, great. And since we only have about 5 minutes left, we'll answer the rest of the questions maybe directly so that Mike can finish the presentation. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Alex, for support there. Okay, so the non-qualifying withdrawals, let's talk about what can you do with the money if you don't, right? I think we talked about it a little bit. Okay. So we have a withdrawal form, of course. Hopefully the withdrawal is not going to be for a long time for now, but like you said, there is a significant reason and value to talk to a client today that might be buying a home in a week, a month, or in the near future. You can still give them tax deduction, complete access to the money when you need it. And of course, for your own business, not a lot of AUM, not a lot of commission or anything for you. But like I said, if you use this as a way of building a relationship for those short-term clients, I think this is something that brings them a lot of value. And it could be a way to leverage maybe RSP assets, TFSA assets, LIRA assets, or even potentially life insurance cases from that same client. So there is a form though on our thing here. So one key thing here is successor annuitants. Obviously, we're all familiar with how to set up seg fund contracts. Like a TFSA, the account holder can actually designate a successor annuitant on the FISA. What does that mean? Well, spousal rollover is probably the best way most people understand it. RSP assets, TFSA assets, upon death, can be rolled over to a spouse, only a spouse, right? Same with the FISA. And what that means is that it doesn't affect the limit, doesn't affect the contributions of the receiving spouse. So, of course, the key thing to understand is if you want to use spousal rollovers, even for RSPs or TFSAs, you make the beneficiary 100% the spouse. CRA has made a commentary that in a situation where maybe the kids were 50% and the spouse was the other 50% beneficiary, and they wanted to actually do a rollover, CRA kind of pushed back on that because they're, how do you do that? It's only can be rolled over. So to keep it clean, if your client wants to actually have that option to roll it over in case of an event of early death of one spouse, make sure the beneficiary maybe is 100% the other spouse. It's revocable, so if some situations change and you want to change the beneficiary, of course, that's always that reason to do that as well. Okay. Beneficiaries and taxation. If the beneficiary of the FIS is not a spouse or common law partner, it basically can't be transferred. Therefore, it has to be deregistered. So, in an event, let's say there is no spouse or common law partner, and they want to make the beneficiary of the contract their children, the money would then have to be deregistered, taxable to the estate, money paid out still to the children. Okay. Marital breakdown. Obviously, we're still aware of the stats. This happens. You can split a FISA to fit both spouses if they're deemed required upon marital breakdown. And of course, now let's talk about deregistration. What's the worst case scenario? They went the whole 15 years. Basically, someone's still alive, which is not a worst case scenario, of course. But let's say they haven't had the ability to buy a home that qualifies and has not transferred the proceeds to a RSP or RIF because maybe they had no room. Okay, the FISA account is deregistered and account value is deemed taxable at that all at once. I would strongly suggest, from giving good advice, if you're getting within 5 years and it doesn't look like they're going to be buying a home, they don't have the RSP limit, maybe you want to start withdrawing that money in little bits instead of getting hit all at once in one calendar year. We're all aware of that in Canada. We have graduated taxation systems. So as you claim more income in one specific year, your higher tax that you pay, right? So if your client's concerned about that, just explain to them that if that scenario does happen, that there's no home, there's no RSP to transfer to, you might just start deregistering money over multiple years to kind of lower that taxable hit at the end of the day. So basically, just to reiterate, if you want to explain it to a client, basically money is just like an RSP on the way in. It's tax deductible, but it has to be tax deductible in that current year. It cannot be used for previous year, or of course, then it can be also claimed later on. It's $8,000 per year with a maximum carrier over of $8,000. So the most that somebody can ever contribute to the FISA in any calendar year is $16,000. Okay, even if their overall limit is higher than $16,000 because they haven't made any real contributions previously, they have to wait maybe the next year until they can fully contribute their limit. Contributions do not affect RSP room. All investment gains are tax-free. Qualifying withdrawals are tax-free. It's more tax efficient than the home buyer's plan, of course. Unused contribution can be carried forward. And in the event the client does not use the investment to purchase a home, proceeds could be moved to on a tax sheltered basis to a RSP or RIF. So this account could be used to fund retirement in the event that a home is not being purchased. But once again, they have to have a limit, and you should actually probably be using this to buy a house more than you retirement. But it could be used that way. Legal notice at the end of the day. I'm going to just say thank you for taking the time. I hope this presentation was you found valuable and you learned some stuff that was new today. I think there's a couple of key points that I think whenever we do stuff like this, we want to help you guys actually have actionable stuff to do. And I think having this tool to be able to go out and be the first to talk to people about it is really important. Even if you don't see any value maybe for your own AUM because of the size of $8,000 today, this is going to be something that should be helping you build your brand and maybe give you new relationships that you weren't going to get. That being said, I still think the real teeth is using the 18, 19, 20-year-old kids and having the full 15 years of growth tax-free, where they use it to buy a home at 33, 34, or move it into an RSP if they have a limit later on. So I think even from your own business point of view, this account could actually bring a lot of AUM teeth to it. So hopefully we can help you. All of our accounts can be done online through Easy Complete. If you're not familiar with it, obviously contact your RISM, either Giuliano in Ontario, me in BC, or any of our counterparts around the rest of Canada. Our online process is very simple. No checks, no signatures, totally best way to do business. You can also do it by paper. So if you're not sure where the forms are, let me know. Everything's available on Equinet, of course. But thank you very much. And I'll take a couple seconds before we go too long to see if there's any last questions that I can answer.
Well, what I was going to say, Mike, thanks again for that great presentation. And again, the deck will be loaded up onto our Win Big because there's a lot of points there that you can re-reference. For those of you that have any further questions, please feel free to give myself or Graham a call out east, or you can contact your Equitable Wealth wholesaler. And if you're not sure who that is, just give us a ring. But definitely a great opportunity with FHSA to reach out to your clients. And again, the next generation, it's great to get the next generation as clients, and the FHSA is a great door opener for that. And once again, Equitable is first on the scene, the first life company to offer FHSA. So definitely take advantage with all your clients. And once again, I just wanted to thank Mike and Giuliano, wherever you are. We missed you, but and thanks to Graham as well for kicking this off. And once again, thank you all for your business. We will issue the CE credits as well. So once again, thanks everybody. Have a great day, and thank you again for your support in business. Take care.